Hi everyone, I am Chris, this is Simply Classic, and today we are going to use an inspiration bag and a little bit of creativity to make something truly awesome. So let's take a look at our inspiration bag. This is a Patricia Nash bag, and this has been in my little folder of inspiration for a really long time. I love Patricia Nash. She has a very kind of vintage Western style to her bags. And this one falls right into that category. So we are going to use the free pattern by Swoon called the Dollie to make this bag. So I'll link this below so you can go ahead and grab a copy over on the Swoon website. We have a lot of pattern changes because the size of the bags are very different. The very first thing I did was made a dollie. Just no pattern changes, just like it comes. And this is what I came up with. Isn't it cute? This is such a cute bag. I made it literally out of scrap leather. I mean, it's little, it's cute, it's got this really pretty flap, it's got that round style, just like the inspiration bag. So this is our starting point. This is our ending point. I'll show you this bag. And this was made out of our faux ostrich crocodile. Let me get the strap here. And so we are literally going from this cute little size to this larger size. So the Swoon bag, the finished measurements are 6 wide by 6 tall by 2.75 deep. Our inspiration bag is 9.5 wide by 7.5 tall by 3.5 deep. So there's a huge difference, and of course we're going to have to change the pattern pieces to account for that. Now, in addition, I added this front little pocket here, just like the inspiration bag. And I'm going to throw a picture up here so you can see on the inspiration bag what that looks like. So it's just a pocket that's sewn to the front just to give you a little extra storage. The inspiration bag also has a pocket in the back, which the Dollie does as well, so that's just a size difference as far as the pattern piece. And the other thing I did was I did make a crossbody strap for this, but in the end I really liked it. I feel like the bag's fairly large. I really liked it more as a shoulder bag, so when I make the one that we're going to make today, I'm just going to do a shoulder strap instead of a crossbody strap. Now this again is an inspiration bag. You do whatever you want, however you want to do it. I originally thought I had a buckle that would work really well for this, just like the inspiration bag. Well, not just like, because theirs matches the leather, but I had a bronze one I was going to use and it ended up not looking good at all. So I had a make it work moment, and I ended up using the pattern piece that came in the Dollie, but cut off the top of it and made a little shape to get that on there, and just to make a little snap tab. So that's part of using bags as inspiration and altering patterns and changing patterns up, is you have to kind of do whatever you need to make things work out. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go over pattern changes, because we do have quite a few. The pattern itself doesn't change that much, but the sizes change a lot. I'm going to be using a leather. It's a chocolate brown leather. And then I also have a honeydew, which I absolutely loved leather, that I'm going to use as accent pieces, and you'll see what I cut out of that. And if you are not on the Facebook group, go ahead and get on there, because I am going to be posting some of those hides for sale on the Facebook group. And there's not a lot of them. There's maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 of them. And just as something you can get if you'd like to go ahead and try to make something like this. If not, you can certainly get the faux ostrich crocodile that we have in this brown color, or even the light gray, and do it that way. Now, let me say this about the bag. All this is the same faux. All I did was because it is an ostrich and then a crocodile, I just made sure that I placed the pattern pieces in such a way that I was able to get the dark and the light so that the pieces were cut. Like for instance, this accent piece was cut on the crocodile part of the faux, and then this piece here was cut on the ostrich side of the faux. So I was able to use the faux to my advantage to kind of get this mixed look without having to cut into two different kinds. But I will say I had to use 2 rolls of the faux to get this, because I did so much fussy cutting that it took a little extra, especially when it came to the crossbody strap. When I got through, I just didn't quite have enough for it and one other piece, and I can't remember which one it was. Okay, so let's go over pattern changes. Okay, pattern changes. The first thing you want to do is cut out the pattern using the pattern pieces that are given. So this is basically what you'll get for the back bottom panel. And all I did was cut 2 and tape them together so I got a full-size pattern piece. And I did this for a few reasons. One is because we'll actually be using some of these pieces. And also, when I made the original bag, I like to have full pattern pieces when I cut. So once I did all that, I really wanted to increase the pattern by 55%. So what that means is when you go to your printer and you tell it to print, instead of printing at 100%, you want it to print at 155%. But what's going to happen is that several of these pieces are on the same page when you print the pattern. And when you go to print at 155%, all the pieces aren't going to print on the same page. It's going to go off the page. So you could do one of 2 things. You could take it to a Federal Express store or Staples or Office Depot or whatever and ask them to blow it up for you, and they'll put it on large paper. Or you can do what I did, which is that I took each piece individually. So now I'm looking at just this piece here, cut it out like this, put it on my printer and scanned it in. And then once it was scanned in, I printed it at 155%. And when I did that, I came up with a pattern piece that was this size. So here's the flap. So this is at 100%, this is at basically 155%. So that worked well for all of the pieces except for the gusset. The gusset was too large. So you can see here that I have a couple of triangles drawn on there. What I did was I drew a line, drew my little marks, just like you would if you were making a shirt pattern or something. You have little tick marks, so you have to, or even when you print my patterns, you have to actually match up by hexagons. So I made little triangles. I cut it apart right there on the triangle. And then I scanned in the upper section, scanned in the lower section, and then printed it at 155%. And then just taped it back together, matching up my triangles. And that's how I got the piece to be this big. So I had to do that for the gusset, and I had to do that for the vinyl snap tab, those 2 pieces. Everything else I was able to just cut out, scan in, and print at 155%. So you choose how you want to do it. Whatever is easiest for you works. Okay, once you print everything and you have all your pieces, you're going to have a set at 100% and you're going to have a set at 155%. You can actually do away with the flat panel at 100%. You're not going to need that. You're not going to need the back top panel at 150 or at 100%. You can do away with that. You can do away with the vinyl snap tab at 100%. We're not going to use those pieces. We're also not going to use the back panel bottom piece. So all of those, don't worry about. We are going to use the main panel, and we are going to use the main gusset, the original main gusset piece. Let's see if I can find where that is. Right here. So of your original 100% set, these are the only two pieces we're going to use. And then we're going to use everything else at the 155%. So let's go over the pieces. So we have our flat panel. So what I did with this is I rough cut, and I'm going to put a picture up right now that shows you what rough cutting is. I rough cut 2 pieces of leather. And you see here that I have the back as the accent. Then I glued them together, and then once they were glued together, and they were dry, I put the flat panel on and I cut it out. So what that does is it gives me a nice flat panel that's double-sided, and all my edges are perfectly matched up. Since I cut it afterwards, they're nice and smooth, and when I go to top coat and edge coat that, or base coat and edge coat that, it's going to be perfect. So that's how you do the flap. In addition, I took my vinyl snap piece, I laid it on a blank piece of paper, and I traced it, or cut out, this piece of paper down here, a 1/2 inch larger on each side. And this is for that accent on the flap. I didn't worry about the shape at the bottom. That's not going to matter. I just went all the way down, used my rotary cutter and my ruler, and I just cut. So now this is my piece of paper. This is my pattern piece. So I cut an accent piece with that, and I just cut it full size starting out. Okay. Then what I did was I took the piece and I laid it on my flap. Of course, it's not sewn down yet, but I clipped it right in the middle, and then I cut it, I matched it up at the top, and then I cut the shape at the bottom. So we're going to sew this on first, and once we sew it on, then we're going to go and we're going to edge coat everything. So this is a piece you make. Then I cut my vinyl snap tab piece, just like normal. But because this piece is going to hang off the bottom, because that's where our snap tab is, we have to put a backing on it. So I drew a line 3 inches up, and make sure that measurement's correct. 3 inches up from this very point, and drew a line. I rough cut a piece that size, and I'm going to put a picture up to show you what I did, and put glue on the back. And before I put the glue on my main snap piece here, I drew a line so that I knew where to put the glue. I wanted to put the glue from that line down. Okay, so here's a picture of that. Once I did that, I put the male portion of my snap on the back part. I glued these together, and then I went and I used a nice sharp pair of scissors and I cut the same shape. So now these are the same shape with this back piece on. I didn't want this piece to be too, you could do 2 pieces the whole way, but it was going to get a little thick, and I didn't want that to happen. So now, once I put this on, and then put this piece on right underneath this curve, and the way I did that curve is I took my flap and I matched it up and drew a line before I glued it together to see what this top curve needed to be. This is our creative part. And then as we put this down, we're going to match that up And you'll see all this will be glued, or all this will be sewn together. We'll match that up. It'll match perfectly in that curved area, and then we will sew. Okay, so that is probably the most involved part. Okay, from there I cut with my big gusset piece. I cut 2 gussets, and she has a line here that if you want to cut 1 full gusset, you can do that. My leather didn't allow me to do that. I didn't have enough width, so I had to cut 2, but I did have enough width on my lining. So my lining is 1 piece. So when I cut it, all I did was fold this up. Instead of, this is the seam allowance, so I just folded that up and cut 1 piece, cut it on the fold. This is the ginger linen that I sell on the website. Then, keeping with gussets, I told you we're going to cut our little gusset, and this is for that little pocket on the front. So on this one, I was able to cut the gusset piece in 1 piece for the leather, and also 1 piece for the lining. Now I will mention that on all of my leather pieces, I used Deck of the Light outside of the seam allowance, except for the flap. I didn't put any stabilizer on the flap. Here's our main panel piece at 100%, the regular pattern size. I cut 1 out of leather, and I cut 1 out of lining. And again, Deck of the Light on the back. It's going to be for that front pocket. I did cut, I'm going to do a hidden strap connector on the side, and I ended up cutting it out of the accent. So I just took a piece that was 6 inches by 2 inches, because I'm using 1-inch hardware. I'm going to use 1-inch D-ring or O-rings, and fold it to the center and stitched. So I already did that. That's easy enough. We have our back top panel piece at 155%. Cut that out. Deck of the Light on the back. We have our back panel bottom piece, 1 leather, Deck of the Light on the back. We have our main panel piece. Now on this main panel piece, there is a line here that you need to fold and cut your pocket. This is for your back pocket. So I folded that, I cut 1 leather, Deck of the Light, 1 lining, and on all the linen lining I used Woven Fuse 2. And then when you extend this, you're going to cut just 1 main panel, and you're going to cut 2 lining. Okay? And then on the inside, I am going to do a slip pocket. So I just cut a piece here for a slip pocket, and I'm going to do a key fob. And I'm not going to show you how to do the lining in the video. You can do it how you want. I ended up doing a drop-in lining for this bag here, the bag I showed you in the beginning, and it worked out great. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm not going to put a zipper pocket in. All I'm going to do is put a couple of slip pockets with a key fob. So we're going to go over how to do this exterior today. And I'm in the process right now of letting my strap dry because I put some edge coat on it. So what I did with my strap is I took 2 pieces of leather and I cut 3-inch strips. Folded it to the center so they were each 1.5 inches. So what I did is, just like sometimes you do a double-sided strap, you could certainly do that with this too. I could have done that with that honeydew. I could have put honeydew on one side and the brown on the other. But I just put them together, but I left 2.5 inches on each side that the bottom part did not go to the top. I used my English point and cut points in. And what I'm going to do is put my 1.5 inch swivel clasps on here. I'm just edge coating this, and I need to put another coat on there. And then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to put a couple of rivets on each side. And that's going to give me a nice wide strap that's 1.5 inches wide, and give me a little bit of bling with the rivets It'll give me the perfect size strap. So that's how I did this strap. Okay, in addition, you're going to need 2 either D-rings, O-rings, triangle rings, something. I'm going to use O-rings today. You're going to need a couple of swivel clasps. Since my strap is 1.5 inches wide, I'm using 1.5 inch swivel clasps. You're going to need a magnetic snap, which you saw we already put the male end on the snap tab piece. And then I'm going to use a 1/2 inch swivel clasp for my key fob. One more thing I wanted to mention about the gussets. The gusset for the front of the bag, this is going to be to put the front pocket on, we don't want it as wide as what the pattern piece says. So what I did was cut it down the middle, and then I overlapped it by 1 inch and just taped it back together. So what that does is it allows me to keep the same shape, which is kind of a gradual curve up, but it took 1 inch out of the width. When you blow this up 155%, you end up with a bag that's about 4.5 inches deep. The inspiration bag is only about 3.5 inches deep. So I did the same thing with this one. Just cut it down the middle, overlapped it, and then taped it together. So you do want to do that, otherwise your bag's going to be super, super wide. Okay, we're going to start with the flap because we need to do a lot of base coat and edge coating of this, and I need to give it time to dry in between. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape on this accent piece just to hold it in place. We're going to put it on top of the flap. So I'm just going to center it on here. Let me find the center of my flap. Make sure. Make sure everything's going to be lined up. Okay, so from here, we're going to go ahead and stitch around using an 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'm also going to stitch down each side of this accent piece. When I stitch around, I'll be capturing the bottom and then, of course, capturing the top as well, but we'll do separate stitches for this here. So now we're going to go ahead and stitch up each side. And I don't want to stitch beyond my top stitching lines. I'm going to start and stop at each top stitching line. I am going to do one little back stitch to hold this. I'm even going to do it by hand so I don't overstitch. And then the top part is going in a seam. So you can backstitch there. Just don't backstitch far, just 1 or 2 stitches to hold it in place. And we'll do the other side. And then 1 little back stitch. And now we have that done. I think, as I'm sitting here looking at this, I think I want to do 2 lines of stitching. I just think that's going to add a decorative touch with the different color thread. So I think I'm going to try that. And 1 little back stitch. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, that's going to give it a little bit more of a Western flair. So I'm going to go ahead and base coat all around now before I put this piece on, because I really want to make sure I get in this section well, and I don't want there to be any problems with this, because this is thicker than this. You've got 3 layers here and only 2 layers here, so this is going to stick out a little more. So that's what the back looks like. Okay, I did want to show you that I did the lining, and the lining is just a matter of sewing the gusset on. I put a slip pocket on one side, and then I have a key fob in here, and that's all I did on my lining. Now, if you want to pull your bag through the bottom, then you will put a zipper pocket. Because this is a curved bottom, it's a little more difficult to do that because you don't really have a straight space to pull it through. So just kind of keep that in mind. In this case, I think that a drop-in lining is going to be the best bet. So simple lining, you can do this however you want. You can add another slip pocket. You can even add a zipper pocket if you don't want to pull it through. You can just close the bottom of it. All different things you can do. So that is up to you how you would like to do that. So let's move on to the gusset. So take your 2 gusset pieces, and the seam allowances in this pattern are 1/4 inch. So just keep that in mind. And the main reason why is because you have that curve in the bag, and curves are much easier when you have a convex and a concave piece to sew with a very narrow seam allowance. So keep that in mind. They are not 1/2 inch, they are 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to stitch the bottom. I'm going to open up the seam allowance and top stitch. So I'm just going to kind of finger press that. If you want to put a little bit of double-sided tape to hold it down, you can certainly do that as well. All right, we will stitch down the other side. Okay, and there is our seam. So from here, as I said, I'm going to do the hidden strap connectors. So I'm going to measure 1.25 inches, so 1.25 inches down from each side. So I'm finding the centers of the side. I'm going to use my silver marking pen from Springfield Leather. I'll link that below. And I'm just going to draw a line. And that will be the hole that I cut for the hidden strap connector. So to cut this, I'm just going to use my craft knife. These are the Zoid knives, which I really like. They're metal and they have a nice rubber grip. I would say it is my favorite craft knife, and I do have them on the site. I have a few notions. I just carry my favorite things, the things that I use that I really like. And you want to be a little cautious with this. You'd rather go a little small to start. You can always make the hole bigger. And put the point in right at the inch, or the line here where it starts. As I mentioned in the beginning, I have this 6 by 2 inch piece that I turned the long sides into the center. I'm just going to cut this in half. With right sides together, and from the bottom up, I'm going to stick this through the hole. And you want it to be snug, but you don't want it to have any tucks. I'm going to pull it through so there's about an inch on the back. And then I'm going to stitch on the strap connector itself. So right underneath the slit, I'm going to stitch. Just don't overstitch here because you don't want to see those stitches on your bag. So stitch that on really well. And you see there where it's stitched on the actual strap connector. So put your D-ring, O-ring, triangle ring, whatever it is on, and then slip that other edge up through the hole. You're going to pull it tight. And your edges should just about match. So that from the front, you've got a nice looking strap. So we're just going to sew these together. Doesn't matter where you do it. I usually do it towards the bottom. And then from here, 1 inch down from the actual seam, I'm going to put a dot and I'm going to set a rivet. So centered, and a 1/2 inch down. I think I said 1 inch. I meant to say a half. 1/2 inch down, right in the middle. Put a dot. And then using my leather punch, I'm going to first just punch through the face. And then I'm going to lay that strap connector down and mark it. And then go ahead and punch through my strap connectors. rivet in. I will go ahead and set that rivet, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the other side. Okay, we have the gusset completed. So we're going to set this aside, and we're going to work on the front of the bag. And we want to mark on the bag where this is going to go. So you want to center it, and I have it, let me mark my centers. So mark the center of the center, oh, excuse me, of the, yeah, center pocket as well. A little add-on pocket. Then I'm actually going to draw a line. I'm not going to go all the way down the bag, but just the bottom portion here. Because I really want to make sure I know where the center is for when we place the pocket on. So I'm going to lay this on top. And the placement is 2 inches roughly from the top. All right, once you have that, just kind of hold that down, and we're going to draw on the bag. And this is where we're going to place this pocket. And make sure you use a silver marking pen when you do that. All right, so now that we know where the placement is, we'll set this main piece aside for just a minute, and let's construct this pocket. So the first thing we need to do is put the female side of the snap on. And where you're going to place it is 3 inches up from the bottom. Okay, so now that that's on there, let's go ahead and get our gusset piece. We're going to put 1/4 inch double-sided tape on the opposite side of this gusset piece. So I'm just going to it'd be easier to put it on when it's straight than when it's curved on the bag. Okay, so now right sides together. Go ahead and put the opposite end of the gusset that you put the tape from onto the pocket. And you are going to need to make little snips to get it to lay flat and fit right. So you always snip your straight piece. So this is the gusset in this, and don't, in this case, and don't make super big snips because this is only 1/4 inch seam allowance, remember. So you just want to make little snips, enough to open up so that this will fit on beautifully. Okay, so we're going to sew this on. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. You always want to sew from the gusset side. It makes it much easier. Okay, so from here, I am going to go ahead and make snips through both pieces. So I already have snips in the gusset, but I really want to do it through both pieces, meaning the pocket and the gusset in the seam allowance. It's just really going to help everything lay better. And I'm even going to take some of that bulk out. So I'm going to snip little triangles out. And that way this leather has a place to fold. When you fold this over, the extra leather is going to have a place to go, I guess is the right way to say that. All right, we'll get rid of all our little triangles here. And that's our little pocket. So we're going to do exactly the same thing for the lining. Now on the lining, I'm actually going to cut this back to about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I am going to leave some at the top so I can open it up to help with the bulk. Okay, so there's our little lining piece. So cute. So now we're going to put right sides together, the lining and the fabric, or the leather here. I'm going to open up the seam allowances and I'm going to stitch straight across the top. So go ahead and clip all this together. And now we're going to stitch straight across the top. And I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance for this. Okay, don't cut any seam allowances back. Just go ahead and flip this pocket lining to the back. I don't want to see any lining peeking through, so I'm going to turn it so that the face of the bag shows a little bit on the back, just a little bit. sure your seam allowances are open. Okay, so now we're going to top stitch. All right, so that's what we have. So fold your bag so it's all wrong sides together. Get your seam down in there really good. And you're going to see that your lining is a little bit larger here than your bag. What I did on the first one, and I will do again here, is just trim that lining down. Because what we're going to do is peel the backing off the tape, and we want to catch the lining in that seam. So you're going to actually cut it about a 1/2 inch. So up here it's going to be a little tough. It's okay. You can just kind of make a little indentation and then go ahead and trim. And you'd be better off obviously to trim too little, because you can go back and trim again, than too much. So just take a little bit at a time. And I'm just going to kind of taper this to nothing here. Oops. So I'm just going to taper it right off. Okay, let's see if that was enough. And you can see the double-sided tape there, and that's basically what I want. I could probably trim a little bit more here at the bottom. So I'm going to do that. So we're going to peel the backing off the tape and fold this over. And all I'm going to do is fold it over and catch the lining. And I'm folding it over about a 1/2 inch. Excuse me, about 1/4 inch. And you do have some bulk here because you folded this over and used top stitch, so just keep that in mind. I was able to get through it on the faux leather, no problem. I think this leather is going to be fine as well. Okay, so I have my gusset marked. I had marked that at the bottom here, and that's what we're going to line up with the bag. So what we want to do is to put this on the bag, but it's going to be inside this line, because remember we just took away a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you're going to be about a 1/4 inch inside. The only thing I want to caution you on is make sure your two sides of your pocket are the exact same distance from the top. So it's not going to be the original amount that we measured, because we took a 1/2 inch seam allowance and we folded that over. So it's going to be a little bit less than that. So that's the main thing, because you don't want your pocket to be on here wonky. Okay, to get this to hold on, I'm going to put more double-sided tape. Now, let me just say that the best way to put this pocket on would have been to cut this into 2 pieces, add seam allowances, sew the pocket in. I mean, it would have been a lot of pattern changes. So I'm doing it this way just to try to keep it as simple as possible. But if I were to write a pattern for this bag, that's what I would do. So if you are so inclined, you can certainly do that. This works. I'm going to come down 1 inch and make little marks, because again, I want to make sure that my top pieces here match up perfectly, my sides. So that's the main thing that I want to make sure of. So instead of being basically 2 inches, I'm going to come down 3 and just put a little line, because that's where I know I want my sides to be. So now let's peel the backing off this tape and lay it on there. So I'm going to line up one side. Now remember, it's not directly on this line, it's just inside the original shape that we drew. Okay. So from here we're going to top stitch this on. I'm going to make myself a little hump jumper and make sure I protect my leather right there. And as I'm sewing this, I'm having to kind of smush the gusset down to lay it flat. Make sure I don't have any tucks. Now, if you do this inspiration bag, one thing you could do is, if this is a little much, just keep this pocket off. You can certainly do that and really get the same effect and the same look, just without that front pocket, as the inspiration bag. Okay, so here you can see the stitching lines really well from the back. And then from the front, that's what we have. And there is, see the pocket. And then of course, once you get your silver marking pen off, you've got it. Okay, I'm still waiting on my flat to dry. I just put a coat of paint. So we're going to start on a few things in the back. We're going to take our lining and pocket piece, put them right sides together, and we're going to stitch. We're going to turn this, put wrong sides together, And I don't want my lining peeking through, so I am going to make sure that the face of the bag is slightly to the back. All right, I'm going to go ahead and baste this pocket closed. Got a little bit of lining here on the front, peeking through because I made sure that my pocket was turned at the top so that the lining wasn't peeking through. So I just want to cut a little bit of that off, make it even. And let's go ahead and stitch the gusset to our front piece. So I'm going to match up the centers. Put a few clips and then match up the sides here. I'll make some clips. Make sure all this fits perfectly. And then we're going to stitch this on. Out just like we did on the front pocket piece. We want to make sure that this bag has plenty of space when we turn it for this extra leather to go. All right. So we have all these little triangles cut in on both sides. Okay, let's go ahead and finish up the flap. So let's put some double-sided tape on the raw side, basically the raw leather. I'm going to put it right over my tag, the back of my tag. I did put my tag here, just above where we had the other piece on here. And I'm just going to match up this curve here with the bottom curve and center it. So I think I'm going to turn it over this way. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch. Now when I stitch, I'm going to go all the way down, go to this point, and then come all the way up. So that'll give me the top stitch down here at the bottom, and it's also going to give me the stitch to get this onto the bag. I did, when I was base and edge coating the flap, I also base and edge coated this piece here. Okay, so that's all ready to go. And I'm going to use the little dot trick and put a tiny little dot right here where I want to turn. So I'm going to stitch to that dot. Make sure that my needle goes into the dot. And then at that point I will turn and come back around. So question is, do I want to do a second row of stitching? I think I'm just going to keep it one row on this. So now you're going to get your back bottom piece and you're going to put it right sides together with your flap. Your back bottom piece is a little wider than the flap, so go ahead and mark the center. We'll match those centers. And you can put your bottom piece on at the same time if you want. Now this piece is wider on one side. This is a long side, this is a short side. You can put the long side against the flap. Okay, go ahead and stitch. Okay, so from here, you're going to flip the whole flap over and the upper back piece. And then we're going to top stitch on the bottom piece here. So if you don't want a back pocket, at this point you would just stitch your gusset on. If you would like a back pocket, we did our back pocket here, we're going to put this right on top. And we're going to clip it in place. So I think we're good. Let's go ahead and baste it on in place here. Okay, so now we have a nice big back pocket. So let's attach this to the gusset. So find the center. I'm going to put right sides together, clip the centers. You're going to have to just kind of fold your flap out of the way. And then you're going to have to make little clips again in your gusset. All right, we're going to sew the gusset on. So we've got more bulk here because we have our pocket. So try to trim some of that off and then cut your little triangles in. Okay, everything's trimmed and looking good. Before I turn this, I am going to put some double-sided tape because I'm going to do a drop-in lining. So I'm going to open up these seam allowances as I do it. Just come all the way around. I'll be able to fold this right over that Decoville light. It's going to give me a nice crisp edge. I'm going to go ahead and take that off and fold it over now. See if I get it to stick really well, which I'm sure it will. This double-sided tape was made for leather. So go right over that Decoville. Okay, so from here, let's turn the bag. So cute. So now we're going to take our lining. We're going to slide that in. I am going to trim this lining seam allowance back just a little bit. All right, let's stick it in. And the first thing I'm going to do is match my side seams and clip my sides. And then once the sides are clipped, I'll go ahead and clip the rest of the bag. All right, we're going to take this over to the cylinder arm machine and we're going to stitch it all closed. Okay, so here we are at the cylinder arm. We're going to go ahead and get this stitched together. Okay, so here it is. We've got this really nice back pocket. We have 1.5 inch shoulder strap. Perfect length. It was 35 inches and I folded it in 2.5 inches on each side. I really love the feel of the leather. The accent is so cool. And then of course when you flip it up, you have that underneath in the accent color. And then of course we have our slip pocket and our key fob and our little front pocket. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I tried to show you every aspect of making the inspiration bag, but you can certainly leave off whatever parts you don't want. There's also so many things you can do with this decorative handle here. You can do the buckle like the inspiration bag had, or you can do same color. I mean, again, options are endless. So until next time, everybody, happy sewing.